private, oops, there we go. Private GenAI for the enterprise with Kyler Middleton. And there we are. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Howdy.
Very excited
awesome.
to be here.
That was a little I need a little bit more practice on that, switching between the videos and yeah, I'll figure it out one of these days. I apologize, Damien. I know that you get irritated when I do that. Welcome everybody to V Brown Bag. Kyler, I'm particularly excited to have you on because I've been harassing you for at least 4 years to come on the show.
It's been a while. We sort of knock elbows in the same circles. It's very exciting. Oh, I see the chats on the side. This is so cool. Definitely possibly an AI. Keep sending chats. We're going to read them. That's awesome.
So we've been ships passing for a long time. Even back before I came on at HashiCorp, I met you through Ned Bellavance and that crew. And I love making fun of Ned. And you love making fun of Ned as well. And so we bonded immediately.
That is true. Yep.
So that worked out very perfectly. And you have been working on something very fun recently. You've been creating a Slack bot using generative AI. The premise under which was you work in an area where you can't let data leak. So you had to build it privately. And I've been watching the articles, fascinated with your progress on this. And so I was like, let's have a conversation. Let's see what's going on with this. So welcome to everybody in the audience. If you have any questions as we go through this. Oh, wait, let me do my job again. I apologize, Damien. I'm still not doing my job. If you have any questions, you can @VBrownBag on the social medias. We are paying attention on YouTube, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads. Are we watching Threads? We're still watching Threads.
I'm not.
You're not? Okay.
No.
Well, okay, disregard. I'll move that off later here. I will remove that logo. And everybody that's in the audience, we would love to hear any questions that you have as we go through this.
So our V Brown Bag handle on Blue Sky is @vbrownbag.com.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And if you V Brown Bag if you type V Brown Bag in Google, all of that stuff will come up and you'll see all of the different options to harangue us. And we would appreciate it if you did. And we will also be giving away 50 AWS compute credits at the end of this to one lucky random attendee, or Kyler's choice. You get to choose how you want us to expend the compute credits. Because if you've been burning through like a lot on Bedrock because of
I might need
the AI stuff, I'm totally okay. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So I have a ton of questions, but I'm genuinely stymied as to where we should start with this. Damien, I didn't even ask how you've been doing.
It's okay. I've actually been very busy, I guess, telling Chris all the things he's been doing wrong, according to him. So yes.
Yeah, which is totally fine. I mean, I get that a lot, so it's fine.
Do we want to do some marriage counseling before we get started? Because I'm up for that. I could help. How does everyone feel tonight?
He's been a little prickly recently, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's
I don't even know who he is anymore.
What happened to us? We used to laugh.
Chris never drinks coffee at home.
Maybe he's just an asshole. Wait, no, that's an entirely different Saturday Night Live skit.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So yes, Kyler. I've been doing very great. Thank you.
Good.
Kyler.
Good deal. Kyler, for the folks in the V Brown Bag audience that don't know who you are, I've been a longtime fan, but I'm sure that there's a bunch of people like, ships passing and the different things. The audience here isn't like necessarily steeped in the DevOpsness and everything. So who are you and why should they listen to you?
Absolutely. I don't think you should. Like, let's challenge the premise of that question. You should go build your own thing. But if you want to get a head start, like I've got some code to help you get started, or maybe talk to an AI, which I might be here. I have been kicking around IT for about 15 years since I learned that they don't pay librarians very well. That's my college degree. But it's basically the same thing, right? You find stuff on the internet, you help people learn. Yeah, I think it works out. I have been every job title, I think, so far. And so AI became a new job title a couple years ago, and I was like, I have to have that, like a Willy Wonka child. And I'm just trying to learn it. It's a really cool field with a lot of math that I don't understand that I am just kind of figuring out on the job. I'm currently the cloud security chick is the moniker I use because I think I have 4 or 5 job titles, and it's just hard to remember them all.
Hmm.
Host a DevOpsy focused podcast with Ned Bellavance called Day 2 DevOps. I'm volunteering with a social media group called Cherry that we're trying to establish. It's like a safe space with this sort of interesting political times in the United States. And working at a healthcare firm in the United States. And healthcare and finance are very locked down. Like if you screw up bad enough, your CIO goes to jail. So they really appreciate when we can do some secure stuff like this that we're talking about today. This Gen AI privately that doesn't get him sent to jail. That's good stuff.
Wait, we could send the C-suite to jail? Like,
You're right. I haven't explored the blackmailing possibilities here. Let's pause this because I got to go research.
they make a lot of money. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that. I'm saying those words out loud.
It's just a redistribution. That's all.
Yeah. Is it the good jail or the bad jail? Because that's what I would want to know. You know,
in office space terms, I think it's the white collar jail. I think it's the good one.
Yeah,
that's the actual
jail.
office space one. But yeah.
It's the one with a yard and conjugal visits and
yes,
far too easy. Far too easy.
Yes, like the jail in Arrested Development. Got it.
I was gonna say that. Love that.
Awesome. Okay, so actually let's get into it because I really want to dig into the articles and the thought process behind this and everything. Do you want me to bring up your screen?
Yeah, let's do it. We can demo some stuff.
Okay. Fun.
So this is intended to be like a general purpose Slack bot. That's where it started. So this is well, I have a diagram. Let's pull up the diagram. Here we go. I drew a lot of lines. You make more money if you draw more lines. I don't know why it is, but if you draw more lines, people think you're smarter. So I added a lot of lines. But basically, like users over here will either ask a text question or send a Slack snippet, which is 20,000 characters. That's a lot. That's not like, a novel, but it's a novella maybe. And you can attach some docs into Slack, and it sends a webhook over to a Lambda receiver that hands it off to a regular Lambda and responds. But I also wanted it to read all of our documents. I really wanted to build like a virtual Kyler and never work again. That's the dream, isn't it? The V Kyler and no one knows, and I just kick my feet up.
Yes.
So goal is I want to train it on all of our internal data. And I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I set up a Bedrock knowledge base, and we read all of Confluence, and we're going to read an S3 bucket to store a bunch of like CISA standards and NIST standards. And like, say we make it an SRE that's also super good at InfoSec, and then we have it read all the logs for all of our stuff. So like a DevOpsy bot. But also like read the whole SharePoint. So if people have questions about payroll, like it can just answer that. And at first I just thought I'll have to do this really cheaply because no one would spend money on something like that. It's just kind of a silly project that I'm using to like, leverage myself into a new role. But it turns out a lot of people will spend a lot of money on that. And each of these companies like this Microsoft SharePoint, Confluence, every other platform you are aware of that like folks can store data has an AI now, including Slack. And I think Teams has too. And they all cost like, $10 or $20 a user a month. And the company I'm at has 3,000 users. So that would be like somewhere in the realm of $30,000 to $60,000 a month. And so suddenly my silly little project became really, really useful and really, really cheap because it just is, it's like one Kyler of cost and like maybe $25 a month of Bedrock credits. So
I think you just described Altman's road to profitability in like 15 seconds.
Absolutely. If you can have it read everything. And that's Draw of AI. That's how I got into this initially. I met with our InfoSec team and they said, the standard pitch of like Gmail, but also ChatGPT is that you're the product. And so they're reading all of your data. They're training on everything that you upload. And a lot of our folks that work in this regulated industry, this regulated company, Veradigm, were uploading all of their emails to ChatGPT, because like then it can like really sound like intelligent, well organized. Like there's a ton of benefits to doing that. It's also like potentially not legal, so like please don't do that. So we want to
I
make
was
a
going to
paved
say,
path.
I thought that's so they've stopped doing that, right?
Yes, they have stopped doing that. But you've got
Okay,
to have an alternative, because if you just say like, hey, you're not allowed to like do this thing anymore, people will find a way. People are very creative. We give it to every end user. They will find a way, especially software engineers. They're creative at working around limitations. So I want to build a paved path for them in a platform sense. So like this is that paved path. Don't go and upload your emails to ChatGPT. Upload them to Vera, which is the first word of Veradigm. And so just, you can ask it simple questions, you can use snippets. It does these little conversation boxes and says like, what is this crazy bash command that I found? Oh, well, it uses that. And you can see like it understands bullet points, it understands flagging stuff as code. It also kind of streams. So I say like, can you provide a different command that does the same thing? That triggers the webhook to the Lambda that goes to another Lambda that talks to the Bedrock backend, and hopefully is actually going to work. I'm messing with it right now, so it might be broken. Oh, there! Oh my God, it worked! I'm so glad.
The Democrats have been appeased.
And this is cool, right? But this is just ChatGPT. This is like one-to-one. It's useful, but it's not the most useful. It is cool that it's read our Confluence. But something else that like I didn't really expect that people immediately started doing is you can invite these bot things in Slack into your shared rooms, and it accesses your information through a thread. And that's how people talk when they have these big conversations, / knockdown, drag out arguments. They're in Slack threads generally, because you can hide your banter and your cursing at people in threads. It's great. You won't get fired. Trust me. And what people were doing is tagging this bot and saying, hey, like, can you summarize what's going on in this thread? And it can write like 50 words that summarizes the perspectives and pro con of everyone's perspective in the thread. Because it can read that Damien and Chris are having a hard time in their marriage and summarize their disagreements, but also like make recommendations based on different people's perspectives. Which is incredibly valuable and not something at all that I expected. It's totally something people invented, and I just kind of steer into.
Chris, we're actually gonna like accidentally make people think that we are married.
Only married for the purposes of this interview today.
I mean, 1 hour every Wednesday night. Who could that hurt?
You know what? Actually, that's fine. That's fine. And you're tall enough. We can hold hands in public, and it's not like this weird imbalance, So totally
we'll show up at conferences. We'll like do long walks on the beach together. Yeah, I'm in. Let's do this.
Yes.
And I have a goldfish memory. That's just true of me all the time. So I write everything down. I have like really detailed notes because I can't remember anything. Thank you, ADHD. But so I decided to make that a superpower. And I have been blogging for literally like 5 years of these incredibly detailed blogs. Like, here's a diagram. Here's an example. Here's all the buttons to click. And there's a red box on where to click. And so I literally put out every step of how I built this. All the code is MIT open source. All the buttons I had to click are literally in screenshots. You could go build this today for free. And as long as you're not using knowledge bases, you'll spend like $1 to $3 a month for like hundreds of requests. It's incredible cheap compared to what you'll be paying like $10 or $20 seated per user per month. It's wild.
And below is the URL for this. For those that are playing at home, feel free to go to the link that we're looking at right now. And okay, so when you first started in part one, building the Slack bot in WebSocket mode, and then building the resource, you started locally, right? Were you running Olama on your laptop and you were just playing around with it locally, or how did you get started?
No, I just wrote a simple static Python config. There are some really great examples from AWS. Actually, I was going to do Azure AI, but I don't want to learn how function apps work. And I know how Lambdas work. So I just decided like I might as well learn Bedrock.
Function apps are disappointing because
Ugh.
I like Azure, but Lambdas are amazing.
They're so good. And
Yes.
the future is obviously like Kubernetes containers and stuff. It is
Right.
not serverless. It's so grown apart. It's so different. And
Yep.
so, if AWS and Azure had done a better job standardizing, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in Azure. But I didn't want to learn how function apps work. So instead, I just moved over to Bedrock. But I was just writing stuff locally and running it. And you just ask one question. Like, I think their example question is what's the capital of the United States or something, or Colombia? And it just returns a response on the command line when you run your Python config. And I saw that the API supports conversations where you assign a role to your user. So it's a user or the bot. And I did this silly conversation like, tell me a joke about a cat, and it tells you a joke. And then the next turn of the conversation is the user saying, now a dog. And the AI can understand that context, like in the same way ChatGPT does. It understands there's a flow and it's not just an isolated question and an isolated answer.
Right.
And I thought, like, can I put this in Slack? Is that a thing? Like, can I have it just be a bot that no one will have to talk to me ever again? Because that's amazing. And I just started building from there. I set up an ngrok, not even an install. You just run the ngrok tool and it receives public webhooks and pipes them locally, and set up our little Slack bolt listener in Python, and just started collecting, like, what do the Slack webhooks look like when you register an app? Like when you DM it, what's it look like? And it would fail each time, but it would print it out to CloudTrail or CloudWatch or whatever cloud thing Amazon has decided to come up with to do logs for Lambda. And just started writing Python. Like, I just like to mess around. That's absolutely how I learn. I say mess around, but what I mean is, like, just go do it in a very literal sense. That's how you learn cloud, and that's how you should learn cloud. Go mess around, go do it. And that's what I did here. And it worked really well so far. It's silly.
It helps if you have a problem to solve. At least for me, right? Like, I can't just go mess around pointlessly. But if it's like I'm trying to figure out how to do this thing, right? It's a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Which is part of why I like Azure, because it'll give you 50 million different ways of solving a problem like AWS does.
100%.
Yeah.
You want to run a container? Well, let me show you these 6 services called, Valkyrie versus race car. And it's like, can you just call it container runner thing?
Right,
please?
right. Yes. Yeah.
You know what? On the bright side, though, they did just kill Chime today. So let's small victories.
I'm surprised. I'm sure it's going to be Teams. It's hard to beat free when you have any Microsoft licenses, but I'm a big fan of.
They are moving to either. They are now. AWS employees are now able to use Teams, Zoom, or WebEx. Their choice. So Chime is no longer on the menu.
Do you want to eat sawdust or grass? I don't know. Those are all great options.
Okay. Anyway, so underneath the covers, which LLM are you using? You're running Bedrock.
Yeah, absolutely. So Bedrock is neat. It can run a lot of these different AIs in serverless mode. You can absolutely, like, train them and deploy a reserved instance is what they call it. But minimal cost of that is like $30,000 a month. And for my little Skunkworks project, like, that's wild. For an enterprise maybe, but I'm not going to pay for that. So serverless mode, you just pay for tokens, and it's something like $1 for 1 million tokens. And in the average question here, like, this is probably 200 to 300 tokens. So you can ask, like 100 questions for $1, something like that. It's a very small fee to use this serverless AI. And you can deploy all sorts of models that are supported. I chose Anthropic Claude Sonnet v3. But you can test out all of them. There's this cool little page. I'm sure I could pull it up. And you can just do side by side and ask it the same question and see how it responds. And I intended for this to be sort of a software engineer DevOpsy style bot, and Anthropic was the best at the time. And all the different AIs have different APIs, how they expect you to sort of format their code and stuff. But eventually I implemented the Converse API, and I think I even have that called out here. Yeah, that's the one that just launched yesterday, is now live, where it is a front-end standardized API that AWS provides, and you can just switch out the AI behind it. And they provide the sort of reformatting of your API calls on the way to the AI.
Oh, that's convenient.
So
Nice.
if you're like, 04 Mini is pulling ahead today, when I tested it in the console, I'll just switch it up. You just declare a different model in serverless mode, and it'll just use that instead with one-liner in your Python, which is really cool. I haven't used it yet because I'm really happy with Anthropic Cloud so far, but I could.
And are you, so you're in part 5, building a RAG knowledge base, are you now scraping all of the information inside of the company to like give information back, not touching the cloud, not leaking sensitive data and information?
Yep. I tasked the AI to read Confluence. Confluence is an Atlassian wiki product, and I had it read all of it. It's 260,000 pages at this company, and we ingested all of it. It goes out and it uses what's called an embedding model to read the source, whatever the source is. There's like public websites. Confluence is one of the built-in ones. SharePoint is one of the built-in ones. And it just crawls the web page, very Google-esque of it, and converts all of that to what are called vectors. They're stored in this sort of purpose-built database that can find similarities between your request and the vectors that are stored, which are like little cookie chunks of the articles. And I have built on that. Initially, we were just calling a couple cookie chunks from the knowledge base, and it was okay. Occasionally, it would not misunderstand your request and send you information that was unrelated. But we implemented re-ranking. I think that's down here, part 8. I haven't written that out yet, but we have it implemented. So basically, we go to Confluence and this knowledge base and say, here's my conversation so far. I flatten the whole conversation into like a big block string. And we get 50 cookie chunks from the knowledge base. And some of them are related and some of them aren't. I have a AI smart person that I talk to named Gaurav that has a PhD in AI stuff and math and all the things I don't understand. And he said that these knowledge bases are basically like providing you books on the correct shelf, but they're not reading the books. So what you can do as a next step, and which I implemented here, is re-ranking. So it takes all the books, and re-rankers are purpose-built models that read the chunks and read, so all the cookie books that you've pulled off. My analogy's fallen apart, and your request, and it decides which ones are most likely to be information that's a response to your question. So if you're asking for like all the colors of the rainbow, it'll look and see which ones are colors. And if they're not a color, it's probably syntactically not related to your question. So we filter that down to like the books that it has read that are the most similar. So 50 cookie chunks become 5 that are most related, or 3 or something like that. And then we add those, we shim those onto the end of the conversation here in step 3 and send it over to Bedrock. And you can see it's filtered through guardrails, which is filtering for like, sexual content, explicit content. We also had a special request from the legal team that was like, if someone says, is the stock price going to go up? Can you have it say, no, thank you? And yes, we can. So we gave it an example, and it uses an AI itself. There's like 6 different AIs all involved in this like 3-second waltz to answer your question. And all of that appears to work like incredibly well. I've certainly screwed it up a couple times. One of the fun screw ups was I accidentally wrote the logic wrong to like mark the conversation terms as the user or the bot. And I accidentally marked everything as the user. And because this operates in serverless mode, like the 3rd or 4th turn of the conversation, all of the conversation so far would be marked as user. And the AI was like, cool, we're just making stuff up. We're just pretending to have conversation terms. Awesome. And so it would do the rest of the conversation for you. It didn't need you at all. The bot would say like thing, and it would say like, oh, Kyler said, thank you. That's perfect. And the bot says, oh, you're welcome. And it's like doing a puppet show. And it's very much, I don't want to like be
Who's been a
too
bad boy? Oh, it
be
could me.
exactly. It's like AIs and like, how many tokens am I paying for you to have a little puppet show with yourself where you're pretending you're right? You're complimenting yourself.
Turns out we did spend those $30,000 after all. Damn it.
Absolutely. And it's wild. It's very much like working with a human. Like you've told it, or like a toddler, sort of, where you've instructed it through your actions what to do. And it's making this inference that is a very reasonable inference. If I pretend to have a puppet show in front of you, you'll be like, oh, we're having puppet shows now. Let's do a puppet show. And so it's interestingly not a lot like programming. Sometimes it's a lot like talking to a human, a very influenceable human that is punished if it says no to you. So it very, very much wants to agree with you, which causes all sorts of problems.
Do you have an overweening sense of power now? Do you just like
I do. I do. The
Okay.
you can literally apply that power with the system prompt, which is sort of the guidelines for how the thing should work. And I think I have this here. Python. There we go, right at the top. So this is called model guidance here. And basically it's just an instruction. It's read every time and it's given incredibly heavy weight. So Assistance is a large language model. It's trained to help developers and ops teams. It should follow Slack's best practices. I tried to inventory all the ways that Slack formats messages, like how many tick marks does it take to change it into code, or to do like a little cute code block, or to do bold or bullets. And I was writing all of it out and I could just never get it. Nested bullets are really annoying to say specifically, like how many spaces after an asterisk. And I started asking Vera about it. How can I format for Slack? How can I do nested bullets? And it knew right off. And I started copying what Vera had told me, the bot, into the bot's instructions. And then I was like, oh no.
Wait a minute. Why didn't
it
I just
already
tell
knows
it?
it.
Yeah. Just tell it.
Exactly. Why am I telling it something it knows? So I just said, just format it for Slack. It has been absolutely perfect since then.
Cool.
Hilariously perfect.
I ran into that exact same thing. I was just overthinking. Like I was giving instructions to a computer when I should have been telling somebody that knows a lot more about the thing to just do the thing. When I was building my DevOps mentor. Okay, so 2 questions. Well, actually, first question is from the audience. Any plans to also interact with other services like OpenAI? Just needed an OpenAI endpoint URL and API key and can call from AWS without doing Azure stuff. We have people who want OpenAI and some Bedrock.
Not today, but it's really easy to add. So, I mean, like, say we're using my code, which please do. It's MIT licensed, so it's free. You don't even have to credit it back. Just go use it. And all of this, like ask the Bedrock LLM, it's all function calls. So you could easily write some functions that say like, construct the whole conversation thread on the front end in memory, and then send it over to OpenAI or send it to Azure AI. Because this is just something that you've written yourself. I don't know if I'll support that in the future. Probably not. I'm pretty happy with Bedrock. I will certainly write some support for Teams in the future, because I think 2/3 of this company's on Teams, and the Slack licenses would be like 800 grand a year or something. And they were like, they just laughed at me when I said, can we just move everyone to Slack? Thank goodness I didn't recommend Chime. At least I'm doing better than that.
Okay, so if the prerequisites, somebody's looking at this and they're like, oh, I want to build what Kyler built. What are the things that they need to have in their head before they can get started with this? Python, obviously.
Yeah, totally. Oh, it's strangely broad. So let's just talk about it. So I had to write a Slack app. Slack apps are the thing that you tag. So this is like @Vera or @Vera test, and you register it with your Slack, and it has like a user type thing, and you subscribe to different events, and that generates webhooks. So you will have to play around with Slack and how Slack apps work. That's not terribly complicated, but it's a little unintuitive. However, you can read my free guide if you want to go build it.
Behold,
The two most complicated things are not the AI parts, probably. That like serverless AI endpoints are not terribly hard. You kind of have to understand like how to construct a JSON, like how to put things together in whatever language you're writing it in. I did it in Python, but whatever you want to do. The hardest thing is probably the serverless component. I just had to play around a lot with this. We needed some of the stuff to talk to like the Bato 3 extension to be able to talk to AWS. And I think the requests library is not natively built into the ARM image that's launched from serverless, from the Lambda function. So I had to write a layer custom, which is like you have to extract the Python install and zip it in the correct directory format and then send it to AWS. And like all of that referencing was just a huge pain. Maybe I should have done function apps. I don't know. Maybe that would have been an easier path.
So Chris, what she's talking about is exactly the
what you had to do for
the meat grinder. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
right.
I wrote a Lambda function, Kyler, that automates some of the YouTube and website cross posting that we do with our shows post show. And yeah, just building that giant pain in the butt.
Huge pain.
And
I wish it would
their
just
documentation sucks.
Yeah. Can you just take like a request.txt file and build me an image and just let me use the image? It'd be so much easier.
No.
Oh, so this is all the commands. I put this in comments in the Terraform file because in case anyone ever wants to know, like, where did you get this esoteric zip file from? Well, you can go build it if you want to. You create a virtual environment, you activate it, you remove the old one, you make a directory, and you pip3 install to that directory without any caching. And then you zip it. And I did that with Terraform. But finding that and doing it with the right chipset architecture is just, I probably spent 20 hours writing these 15 lines of code.
Yeah.
Just a huge pain.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Yes, 100%. I suffered through that same pain.
When I succeeded, I'm pretty sure I'm a genius. That didn't last very long, but it was a good feeling. It was a nice, that hit, I do this for the hits. And the Python also is complicated. Yeah, go ahead, Damien.
Python is fun. I like it. I was just going to point out, just so you know that I am dumber than you. I was actually updating my Python Lambda function, and I was thinking, wow, this is a giant pain in the butt. And I have to use WSL, blah, 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 right? Because I just need like a little Ubuntu VM to build it to simulate the Linux environment that Lambda runs as. And I was like, I should really document this. And so I spent all this time documenting it, and then realized I'd already done that.
Oh, you already had a blog about it?
I wrote the documentation in our private repo twice.
I for sure find old code and I'm like, this person's real smart. They think just like me. And it's like, oh, I wrote that.
Years ago. Yep. For sure. So I have a question. You were talking about training it on Confluence.
Yep.
How does it distinguish old Confluence crap that no one has ever touched again from something that's actually relevant?
It kind of doesn't. And that's a problem because Confluence stuff sticks around forever. There are regexes today that you can filter different types of data from Confluence. So pages versus attachment versus spaces versus blogs, but they don't work very well. I could barely get them to work at all. There is hypothetically a regex that filters based on the date that the page was made or the date the page was updated. Right. I cannot get it to work, probably because this specific crawler from Bedrock, this data source, is still in beta for Confluence and from SharePoint. SharePoint is so like non-functional that it doesn't support modern authentication mechanisms. The one that they require you to use is going to stop working in like a year. And it was deprecated like 2 years ago. So many of them are like best effort. AWS is definitely improving them as time goes on, but that's for sure something. Like I ingested 15 years of data and some of the really useful things, like who can I talk to about network stuff that you wouldn't expect an AI to have any idea about? It knows because it has read everything and it sees who writes about what topic. And that's
Mhm.
really cool. But a lot of its names are out of date because it's
Right.
ingesting stuff from the past however long since you started your Confluence. They
Right.
quit 6 years ago. I can't talk to that ghost. Please find someone who still works here. But I haven't yet uploaded payroll data, so it doesn't know that yet.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe not payroll data, but just like active users on Confluence. Yeah, that's a really cool idea. Because
That
I
would be
actually
cool.
have that problem with my current employer. They've been around a long time. They've had multiple products, and just trying to find out information about the product we sell now. Sometimes return stuff from years ago that are common terms, right? And I was just wondering, like, if I pointed this at my Confluence, like, would it be helpful or not? So that's where that question came from.
I think yes. Like I find it to be tremendously helpful. It's kind of surprising how helpful it is to be able to chat with your data.
Hmm.
I didn't find I thought that was hokey. Like AI itself is kind of hokey. Why would I want to chat with my PDF? But now when I get a contract, I put it in ChatGPT or I put it in Vera so it can explain in a 5th grade level what I can understand for legalese. What
Mhm,
am I
mhm.
agreeing to? And so if we can have like, here's another, cool use case is here's a resume and here's a job description. Can you read our Confluence and find, like, given our current architectures and projects in play, because it knows all about that, that's all in Confluence. What should we ask this person? Which parts of this job title should we focus on? And it knows and will give really good guidance on like the key things that actually matter for that person to succeed. And that was staggering to me. Like that's been really successful. You cannot use it for like recommending who to hire. I don't even think that's legal, but you can for sure give it, say like, I need some guidance on what type of questions to ask. What
I am
skills
currently
matter.
taking notes to give to my head of recruitment tomorrow
It
morning.
works so
That
well.
is such a fantastic idea. Holy crap.
Yeah, that seems like a good business right there, Kyler. Do you want us to cut this out of the post?
I This is not the first time this has come up. This is like a skunkworks project that is just for fun, but it's also like a thousandth the cost of the competitors in the space, and it combines data from everywhere. And should I just be starting a business? Why am I working here building this thing if I can like go like Kyler Incorporated, come get my AI?
Because running a business is way harder than working for one.
Yes, I
For
don't want to
one.
be a lawyer or an accountant. I don't want to have
Yeah.
a payroll.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing. I remember when I was looking for a job last year. I forget, it might have been Cody Bunch, one of the original founders of the V Brown Bag, had told me about kind of a battle card format that you could ask an AI to produce for you based on the job description, right? And so it was actually very cool. It would say, this is, let's say a tech marketing role, right? Like this is a tech marketing role. What they're going to care about is this, and that, and why that means, like what that means specifically to their business, which is this. Here are questions you can ask. Like it was this whole, like I felt more armed to go into an interview with this battle card information that it just went out and did for me, right? I just pasted it and boom, here it was.
Hmm.
So yeah, it is very, very cool to have those sorts of things. And now I really kind of want to point it at our Confluence and see what we can find.
I
Um,
think you should. The biggest deterrent is the cost. The AI stuff is like $3 a month, like it's
yeah.
half a Starbucks a month. But the knowledge bases are around 12 or $13,000, like maybe 15 without any tweaks. I've been posting on LinkedIn about the like tweaks I'm able to make to OpenSearch to make it cheaper. And that's been successful in getting the cost down to about 13 grand a year to store all of our Confluence data, which is again like 280,000 pages. That's significant. But still, it's,
That's the cost to ingest and vectorize all of the Confluence information, right?
interestingly, not the atomic cost. So ingesting it costs about $250, like to
Okay.
put it in there. And then there's a recurring cost of around $37 a day, something like that, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does add up kind of quickly. I'm glad I'm not paying our AWS bills.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I was just mortified at that. I'm an engineer. I write shell code. Like every efficiency matters. And when I talked to our security team and our business leads, and they were like, "Do you know how much Slack AI is charging per user per month? Like, or Confluence, or SharePoint, or any of the others, like ChatGPT too?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah. In comparison to 30 grand a month, this is doing fine. Thank you."
Oh yeah, for
Good
sure.
point. Quick question from the audience again. Does Kyler use an AI assistant like Cursor?
To write almost all of this, I used GitHub Copilot, which I've been really happy with. It's not the brightest, but it does okay. I have been introduced to Cursor just a couple days ago, and I have been putting off this sort of two-tiered architecture for Lambdas where there's a receiver and then like a worker node, sort of a queuing mechanism for a while. And I was like, this is a good test for Cursor. It can read all of my code. And it did, and it implemented the feature in like 5 minutes, which is so cool. It also introduced a bug that took me 90 minutes to fix. So AI is not like totally there. I spent a long time finding the bug it introduced, but it did most of the work in 5 minutes, which I think is the premise of AI. It's very much like you are co-programming, you're pair programming with someone else.
Right.
I kind of hate that. That's not what programming is for me. Like I make one change and then I run it and see if it works. And then I make one change versus like it did all the work and then it didn't work. And I had to go back and like, what assumptions did it make?
Pick it
What
apart,
code did it
right.
change? Exactly. And that's a different way of working. And it's probably the future of software engineering. I probably need to get on board because these AI assistants are only going to get better. And if they handle 85% or 90%, or as that percent keeps creeping up of the stuff they can handle, we're just going to be the bug finders. We're the code starers, maybe. But yeah, I think Cursor is very, very promising. I find it really cool. And as I've been writing this in that interstitial between like discovering Cursor 2 days ago and using ChatGPT or using Copilot to write this, I've actually started just asking Vera about how to fix her own problems. She's really good at it.
Oh, she's been doing a lot of introspection, a lot of therapy recently.
Well, she did name herself. I said, "You're helping Viridime. What should we call you?" And she said, "Vera is a short name and it means truth in Latin." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, she's an introspective AI we got going here."
Nice.
Wow, that's cool.
She spent some time on the couch. Good for her.
Yeah. We
So-
all should.
What does Cursor do that GitHub Copilot doesn't do that you've seen so far?
Cursor is a purpose-built IDE around an AI bot, and really they work pretty similarly. But Cursor doesn't have time checks in place that, like for GitHub Copilot in the IDE, you can say, format this giant thing or write me a feature that does blah, blah, blah. And in agentic mode, which just launched, I think this month, maybe recently in the past few weeks, it can run for a while, but it's really limited for like maybe a minute. And Copilot, sorry, excuse me, the Cursor seems to be able to run for like 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, an AI can do a lot. So it can read a lot of your code and understand your syntax and your standards and stuff like that, and write code in different files concurrently so that all the dependencies are satisfied, because all of our code is spread out among a lot of files, right? And implementing a feature involves making certain changes in each file. So a tool like Cursor or the new like Copilot agentic mode is intended to do multi-file editing at the same time and make them sort of work in tandem instead of doing one file at a time and then having to like human between them.
Interesting.
Very cool. But you have to give up VS Code, right? Or is it?
It looks exactly the same. I think I shouldn't switch over because I probably have proprietary code on it. It's VSD is an open source project from Microsoft, and so it looks exactly the same. I think they borrowed the code because it looks exactly the same.
That's really cool. Okay, yeah, I know what you're saying about Copilot, and gosh, I was using it earlier last year, and it was okay. It's gotten better for sure. It understands more context about what you're asking it, right? And it's also really good with just like asking it Git or GitHub questions too, right? Like, which is really helpful. I had a code base that I had never touched it before. It was like a React front end and a bunch of stuff in Go. I had no idea what I was doing. And I said, tell me how I can test this, right? Like, tell me what I need to
Explain,
do.
please. I have
Right.
no idea what is
Right. It
happening.
was like, oh, you need to install NPM and Yarn and do this and that. And I was like, oh, sweet. Thank you. Like, I appreciate you just telling me exactly what I needed to do to work with this foreign code base to me. So yeah. Anyways.
It's also just generally limited in that it's seated. It seems like that's the state of the art for billing for AI these days, is everything is seated per person. So there's 3 of us on the call, so you have to pay times 3. And if you don't use it that month, it doesn't matter. You're paying for the monthly seat fee. And so anything that's going to be token based, like this tool and like Cursor itself works, is just going to be cheaper if you're a low user, which almost all of our users are, and more expensive if you're a high user, which there's just a couple in each company, right, that are like programming all day and night. So tools like this that you're paying for tokens, you can save a ton of money.
Awesome. And I'm going to pop the link up one more time. I know that we're running just a little bit long, and I mean, I have like 1,000 questions for this, but I'm going to just say that I'm going to go spin it up myself and then ask you questions afterwards.
Please do. And I've got this special link, the V Brown Bag link. Maybe we could share that too. That link at the top. Let's do devops.com/vbrownbag. If you subscribe to any of these tiers, including like the monthly tier, there's this cool little checkbox down here. So you get 30 days free, and you can just cancel at the end of that if you want to. I'm not a cop. And go read all of it. You know, all of this will become free. Like all these articles will become free. I think the first 2 or 3 are free. I just have a delay of like 2 months. But if you're stubborn and patient, you don't have to pay. Or if you use this cool little link, you can get a free month.
I'm going to put the article up right here. Thank you.
No one has ever done this before for this show, Kyler.
I just thought that myself. I was like, that's really cool.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah,
that's
for
very
sure.
cool.
I hope it's useful. I want to make it all paid, you know, and like give me all the money, please. But ethically, I just can't do it. I only entered this field because like I found free stuff on the internet that helped me learn. I didn't go to college for this. I have a web design minor. The rest of it I just made up from reading Stack Exchange. So yeah, please learn for free. Please take it all. I think this is like article 87 that I published recently. So I'm building all the things.
Yes. Yeah.
Yay, good humans. Huzzah.
Trying to be. It's hard.
We need more folks like you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So Damien, any last questions? I've scoured the there's comments about how bad Chime is and a couple of things about Cursor versus GitHub Copilot, but no additional questions from the audience. Was there any last questions that you wanted, Damien?
I don't have any more questions for Kyler. I am curious if our AI powered randomizer Python function has picked a winner of the AWS credits.
It is a fantastic question, and he has. Well, actually, hold on. I just clicked the button, and okay. I re-clicked it because you won the thing. The second winner, not Damian Carlson, is Daryl R. One of our new audience members too. So congratulations, Daryl. You have won the $50 AWS compute credits. That does include Bedrock, so you can play with AI using these compute credits. If you would be so kind as to ping me, either if you Google the word Mistwire, I am the first 3 pages of hits on Google.
Don't go past 3.
Don't go past 3. Whatever you do, don't go past 3.
No matter what, no matter your keyword, don't go past 3.
4 is wrong, 5 is right out. Go back to 3.
Very nice Holy Grail reference. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. So congrats, Daryl. Hit me up. I will get you your compute credits.
Yeah. And also, Daryl, thanks for the follow on Blue Sky. You rock.
Oh, hearts.
Daryl's been following me for a while. Good guy. Good to see you.
Cool.
Oh, awesome. Kyler, thank you so much for coming on. This show has been a long time coming. I hope to have you on again sooner than the next 5 years or however long it was. But this was amazing. These articles are so filled with information that anybody can grab just boatloads of information from this regardless. Thank you for publishing it, and thank you for coming on to talk about it, because this is going to be the thing that's going to set people up for the future. Learning these kinds of things and how these AIs interact with each other is going to be very valuable for our audience. And I thank you for all of them.
It's
Absolutely.
how new nerds are born. So thank you.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. Well, welcome new nerds. If there's any new nerds on the show.
We have lots of cookie chunks. So welcome.
I'm going to
Every
go
time
have
you
a
say,
cookie.
yeah, every time you say cookie chunks, a nerd gets his slide pocket protector. All right, everybody, have a wonderful evening, and we will see you. Actually, you will see Damien again next week. I will be traveling, and I will not be able to make it to our next AI talk, which is going to be Aaron Hunter talking about how to pass the AWS AI and ML specialist certifications. So we'll see you all next week.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.